Do you ever have questions about your local government but have no idea who to ask? Honestly, sometimes we're not even sure, and we do this kind of thing for a living. But you shouldn't let that stop you from reaching out. Just call 311 or email 311@portlandoregon.gov, and they can resolve issues or help connect you with someone who can. 311 is available from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week, except federal holidays, but they'll get you information about your parks and rec classes, parking permits. You can even call to request ADA access or report issues in your neighborhood like campsites, graffiti, stolen bikes. Let me just put it this way. If you're wondering who to call and it's not an emergency, use 311 as your first stop. You know, Portland's well known for trying to make commuting by car the less desirable choice. But amidst our city's walkability goals, there's always been a car subculture that's not so much based on driving, but rather transforming and restoring automobiles into something worthy of display. You know, like car shows and racing. And what makes this subgenre of car culture in Portland even more unique than most other cities is how inclusive it's become. And a big part of that is because of our next guests. So today on CityCast Portland, we're talking with two members of Car Crush, a collective of gender-diverse car enthusiasts. Emily, Olivia Tyler, and Rose, Queen of the Vans, organize classes, block parties, car shows, and they even have a podcast, all to make learning about cars more approachable. They're here to give us a peek into their world, and will also be weighing in on who the worst drivers are in the Northwest, Washingtonians or Oregonians. Start placing your bets. It's Thursday, July 18th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. So to me, car culture is more about seeing cars as like possible works of art and the skill of like the owner's mechanical and fabrication skills rather than the actual driving part. Like I grew up in East LA, and so our car shows are legendary. But LA is like also very car-centric, so there is like a lot of cruising around and showing off your car. So I was curious, like, what is Portland's car culture, since we're such a, hey, ride your bike, take the bus community? Like, what is our car culture like?
Well, we have some friends that own like a fixed gear parts shop, and they also own like two. They own a van and a Nova. So I think those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. And in Portland, they certainly aren't.
I mean, I think compared to Los Angeles, you know, you've got the lowrider culture, you've got traditional hot rod culture. It's like automotive fashion spreads across backwards from LA County. And then here, it's sort of like, it's kind of like what you expect, right? Portland's not as big of a city. It's a little bit smaller. And then it's like very much celebrates its diversity and collection of alternative cultures. And so it's like what I found was like when I came up here to visit, all of the ladies that we were hanging out with had cool cars, and there's space for queer culture in cars too. And so it's not that you can't in LA, but it's a little more priced in here.
Yeah. And you know, you spoke about something, Rose, that I haven't thought about, which was like all the genres of car culture, because I know like within my own family, you know, there's lowrider, but then there's also, and I didn't hear it, but maybe there's a word for it, but it's like, you know, the gangster cars, like from the like 40s or 20s.
Yeah.
That's such an LA iconic thing, because I think of like Chinatown, I think of East LA culture, I think of all these things. What does Portland's car culture scene look like? Is it a lot of like, you know, off-road cars, like those like souped up, you know, Toyota trucks or vans, or like what is our calling card?
It's really diverse, I would say. Like, especially I'm out in the suburbs a lot. There's a lot of big trucks out there. There's a lot of like mudding, and then there's a really big off-road community here. Mm-hmm. And then also you go to beaches, which is like every Wednesday at PIR in the summer. And not only is there drag racing with like those cars, which is pretty diverse too, you know, because you can do anything into a drag car. But there is a lot of classic cars, I'd say like 60s, 70s, also the 40s, some 30s.
I've only seen Subarus.
And I'm going to clarify, you said PIR, you mean the Portland International Raceway. Yeah, I live close to it, so I can hear it. Like, I think it's Sundays. Yeah. It's like, and like, I've always wanted to go down and check it out. Like, what is going on over here? let's talk about like, what does like a car show in the Northwest look like?
Well, I have a couple favorites, so I'll talk about those. So there is the Portland Transmission Warehouse Show, and that's one of my favorite ones aside from the Rolling Death show and shine that they do. And that's all vans. And then the Portland Transmission Warehouse, like Rose was blown away by it, by how the diversity and how big the show actually is. So it's outside. It's on 12th and Hawthorne, basically, and they close off the streets for quite a few blocks. And then the beaches at Portland International Raceway is another one of my favorites. It's really cheap, it's really accessible, and it's huge. And there's a lot of different cars there, and you can just walk around. There's a lot for everyone.
And that happens every Sunday, or?
So that's every Wednesday, I think, from like June to August. It's all summer.
Well, Rose, you shouted out Subarus, but what are the most like distinct Oregon cars? Because for sure, trucks. I mean, when I think of trucks, I think of like the Northwest, but I also think because we are more of like an agriculture,
Right.
like I feel like it came from a certain use, and then they're just like, well, let's just trick these out. What are other like cars that you're just like, oh yeah, they're from Oregon?
Well, you've got your finger on the pulse of a national heartbeat. It wasn't maybe 3 to 5 years ago that Ford said they were going to stop making everything except the Mustang and only make trucks. So that's not an Oregon exclusive thing. I think that it's like trucks are sold like 2 to 1 over cars in Texas. Like you ask people what kind of truck they have in Texas and they'll say which one. So to me, first thing that I think of Portland cars is Volvo. You've got IPD here, which is like, a huge supplier of Volvo parts. But I think that what you could say is more specific would be because of the popularity of the Gambler and just doing outdoorsy stuff is more DIY or scratch built, maybe not scratch built, but maybe like home cooked 4x. There's just like trucks and lifted stuff are popular in general.
What's the Gambler?
Ooh.
Gambler 500 is, you would think it's a race, but it's really an outdoors kind of cleanup event where they, go out into the woods and there's an objective part of it. And the objective part is about bringing trash back and getting trash out of wilderness. And then also where I have a shop is a place called the Q Hut, and the Alley Sweeper ends there. And the Alley Sweeper is quite similar, where they go out on bikes and drag trash out of the alleys and clean the alleys back up. And
Wait, what? Because
Yeah, Portland is
I took
rich.
part of it this year, and I was like, we did not do that.
well, that's okay. At least you
Was that-
participated, but you missed the mission objective.
Oh, that mission objective was not clearly explained to, I think, most of the people who took part of that. So that's hilarious. I mean, now I'm like, oh, this is all making sense to me, Rose. But yeah, I did. It was like no pickup, no trash. Like I didn't see bags anywhere.
I think that's probably par for the course because no one ever told me Gambler was about cleanup at all
Yeah.
until I got up here, months ago. I found that out because we went to a little support event for Gambler downtown. So I don't know. I think it's easy for those things to slip aside because I think that being environmentally conscious is faux pas, especially in car culture, except for here, right? Because it's so much about machismo and just being bad. And people don't want to talk about picking up trash. But Portland is its own thing. And so here, those things are combined. So that would be maybe a more Portland unique thing in general, is that it's okay to be into cars and to also be environmentally conscious in some way.
What would you say is distinctly Portland? Like when you see car modifications that are like, oh, yeah, this is a Portland, builder or whatever. Give me some examples because I have no idea.
I do think that the knobby tire off-road sort of like, again, like vehicles that maybe you wouldn't think would be going off-road. Like our friend Elle built a Rabbit pickup on top of a Toyota chassis and made it a 2-wheel drive chassis into 4-wheel drive. So it's like, but before they had built a Subaru Brat body on top of a 4x chassis and, drove it until it fell apart basically. So this is their second iteration. I think of things like that. It's like these home-cooked off-road things that speak to how outdoorsy Portland is. And so it's like, they drive that in the city to work. It's a turbocharged diesel, a TDI.
Like a mini monster truck, if you will.
Yeah, but then they get out and rip it on the trails. And I think that speaks to the way that Portlanders like to enjoy nature.
Yeah. All right, well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, some rules of etiquette if you want to partake in Portland's car building culture. Making the right senior living choice is more than just a simple move for your parents. These are long-term care plans. You need solid information and the right person to walk you through each step of the decision-making process. And Lynn Smarges is that person. She's a trusted senior advisor and placement specialist that works tirelessly to ensure your loved ones find the best care tailored to their specific needs and preferences. From independent living and assisted living to memory care, Lynn guides you every step of the way, offering advice, valuable resources, and unwavering support. She researches the retirement communities which best fits your senior family members' circumstances. Not only that, she sets up the appointments to tour these communities and walks her families through each tour, advocating for them. You can rely on Lynn to offer your family the care and compassion you need during your senior living journey, because sometimes you just need that extra hand. Call in from Pacific Northwest Senior Care today at 503-830-1812 for your complimentary consultation and discover the difference a dedicated senior advocate can make. Are there any unique rules of etiquette in Portland car culture that would just make you be like, it's like, basically if anyone does something, then you're just like, oh man, get out of here. Like, what are you doing? You don't know what's going on here.
I would say if you're super mean, I don't really want to hang out with you. There's like sort of constructive criticism, but then there's also just like hating on certain styles. And for me, anybody that takes their car to the next level, even if it's not necessarily my style, I just respect it and I just can appreciate it so much. Even if to me it looks a little wacky, but it's like, man, look at all this stuff that they did. Look how much they love this car and look at how much they love this process.
Mm-hmm. Would you say then, I guess, being more inclusive in general is more of a Portland car culture thing, or is it just like a car culture thing? Because I feel like I grew up also skateboarding, and that's just a very skateboarding thing. Like there are main skateboarders,
Right.
but like in general, the culture is like, we're going to teach you, and like,
Right.
yeah. Is the car culture like that, you think, in general, or is it just very like
No.
Portland? Yeah.
No. I was on a television show and I went and read the comments once and they were all about me and my body. They weren't about any of the work that I had done. So being trans and being in car culture is some people are very nice to me, and people that have known me and are in the industry, because I've worked at a number of hot rod shops and I've worked for a few legends in the industry. And so people that are also working in industry are respectful of me, but people that don't know me, there were people that I could tell they were from the UK. They were like, oh yeah, sure. This is exactly what petrol heads wanted, in the comments. Like, and here in Portland, rather than people being mean to me for no reason, people are nice to me for no reason. And that's a huge difference. And that's not cross-country car culture. I'm from Indiana. So I know. I used to work in a shop in Kentucky and I couldn't go back there. The owner sure would be nice to me, but again, people there aren't respectful of me as a person.
Yeah. Well, that's also something that I feel that Car Crush has created,
Absolutely.
Emily, what do you think?
Well, I had sort of a midlife crisis, and in 2009, I bought my first car just for fun, and it was 89 Trans Am GTA with a Borg Warner 5-speed and T-tops. Fast forward to 2011, I blew up the engine, and I had to park it, and I was heartbroken. At the same time, a lot of my girlfriends either already had classic cars or they were buying classic cars. We didn't have a ton of experience working on cars. I couldn't find a class that fit me. It was like either become an ASE certified tech or learn how to buy a used car. That was what was available at the colleges at the time. And I just wanted like a slumber party with wrenches. And so I wanted to create this community, and I wanted to see the stories of like women and queer people, because you don't see them represented in automotive media. And so, yeah, creating that space. And at the same time, our classes, we have a wide range of people. And that's, to me, what is really great about car culture is it does have the potential to bring people that maybe otherwise would not be talking to each other. And especially in, today's political climate, it's, kind of nice to see people just having a passion that they share.
Definitely.
I did start Car Crush so I could learn also for me, because I didn't know anything about it. And so we work with mechanics and women that know their business. So like Rose here is the brains behind the engine class. And
Nice.
I've learned a lot. I've got to go through an engine build, I don't know how many times now, but quite a few times. And I'd never taken an engine apart before we did this class.
For those who are just like listening and they're like, I'm not going to build an engine, but I do have a car
and I don't understand how to take care of it. What is something that everyone should learn to do on their car?
I just want to say that I think that's why they should take the engine class. People will often misdiagnose things that are taking place and they want to blame it on something that's external to the engine when it's the condition of the things internal to the engine. And the things that are internal to the engine are really a small number of parts. So we try to tell people like, hey, these are the very basics. Beyond that, the number one thing, check your oil.
Yeah, I was going to say check your oil. Check your oil and then check your coolant also.
Mm-hmm. That'd be the quickest way to fuck up a car is not to do those two things, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. If you don't have oil, your engine will seize.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to somebody firsthand that had a Subaru, like newer. I mean by like 2000 and up. And they seized the engine on the freeway.
That's messed up. They never checked
They ran out of oil.
Man.
So it will be catastrophic,
Mm-hmm.
if you run out of oil.
So when's the next car show just in general that if somebody wanted to go check out interesting builds and just cool cars?
I would say the beaches at Portland International Raceway because it's every Wednesday.
And the turnout's huge. People get there at like 3:30, 2:30 in the afternoon or whatever and just line up and then it goes.
3:30, 2:30 on a Wednesday?
Yeah.
Don't people have jobs?
Well,
these
we're
are
speaking to the demographic.
Yeah,
Okay.
these are.
I see. You're retired.
There's a lot of
folks.
Steves and Daves, but they have the best car. They have very cool cars, and
all the Steves and Daves.
A lot of white
Yeah.
New Balances.
Yeah. Okay, wrapping up. I have just a series of questions here. Very serious. Who do you think are the worst drivers, Oregonians or Washingtonians?
I think that every region has their bad drivers and their good drivers, and I think
yes, of course. We're not. This isn't a blanket statement,
Right.
but it is.
Right. Honestly, I don't know, but I can say that when I go to, like, say if I'm driving through Texas or something, I sort of appreciate how people drive with purpose.
In Texas.
It seems
yes.
or like on the East Coast. On the East Coast, people are driving with a purpose and they're getting somewhere.
I was going to say Houston. They're the worst drivers, period.
See? And then Rose comes up with that.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind is when I drove in Houston and it was like Mad Max.
Yeah, and there are a lot of accidents in Texas too. So maybe I should take the Texas part back and just say the East Coast.
Well, it was a trick question. The answer is both. They're both terrible. Here are I think, not very controversial. This is why Oregonian and Washingtonians can't drive takes. And I'm sorry if you're from here.
Right.
You can't zipper merge. And I don't understand how, because it's like you just take turns. It's really easy.
Yeah.
Or people just stay in that one line and they don't want to zipper merge because they want to be dicks. And I'm like, no, but that's how traffic moves forward. Or they can't make a left turn without making everyone wait behind them. Like in the city, you have to move up. You move up,
Right.
That's like a Bill Burr joke, I think, where he's talking about people that he is very annoyed by. He's like, there are just so many average people. He's like, there are just so many people in my everyday life that just didn't pull in far enough to the intersection. And that's something I think about all the time, him saying is people that don't just go ahead and put themselves in the intersection to get ready to make the darting left turn.
That's what I'm saying, left turn, yeah.
Sitting at the white line, they might not get to go this time.
And I feel like that is a very, when I moved up here, I was like, oh, this is a very Northwest thing because there is this timidity. You learn to drive defensively, which I think is safe. That's a really fine way to drive. But now that we're becoming a bigger city, it's you're ruining lives out here when you don't pull up and allow at least one other person to make a left with you when it's you know what I mean? When it's the craziest amount of traffic. All right. Last question that is going to get us all canceled. What are your thoughts on this illegal drag racing, the street takeovers?
Oh.
I personally, I can't stand it because it happens a lot where I live and it happens at 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just please don't. I hear a lot of quietness. Is it because are you guys doing this? Are you waking me up at 3 a.m?
Oh, God, no. Okay. Absolutely not. Illegal racing has been going on since cars became cars. And I've only seen it one time, and it was when I was walking to White Owl for a vintage sales market.
Yeah, running into illegal street racing on the way to a vintage market is the most Portland thing ever. Can I tell you what I hate about street racing, though? It's not so much the action of because again, hey man, I used to skateboard. Like, of course,
Right.
like, yeah, it's your city, whatever. But it really is, I just don't like young men with like heavy machinery.
No,
And
it's
that's what it is. I'm
scary.
like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
trust any of you.
Right.
Get out of here. Go home. Read a book.
Right. And they're like hanging out the windows.
Yeah, exactly. And the people,
Yeah.
that's what it is for me. That's my Bill Burr moment now, is
Right.
that I hate people, not the cars.
I'm going to go to a Bukowski quote. Nothing that is outlawed will ever cease to exist. Because a street takeover and street racing are completely different things. Takeovers are like donut fests, and they're pretty much just about, getting nuts. And I'm indifferent. I don't really care. Like, I think that I'm not the kind of person that's going to be like, yeah, give people an organized way to do this, because then that changes the whole thing. I think that you have to just enjoy it for what it is. And if you're like the kind of person that enjoys Japanese gardens and peace and serenity, then you have to have yin and yang. Then you have to understand that there's going to be a street takeover sometime, and you're going to be the person saying, get off my lawn. And that's okay, because again, you've got to have those polarities in the world. Like, what would it be like?
It would be good. It would be good, Rose.
Like, would it be the kind of thing like, what is it? I think it's The Giver, right? Where everybody just lives in this banal, like the whole story is told in black and white, and everything is a story of the past.
I feel like it wouldn't be that way. I just feel like there'd just be less things that would annoy me personally. But I hear what you're saying, Rose.
I think that there's a certain mastery to observing things that annoy you and learning how to enjoy them. It's like things like people pick at scabs. You need to take the things that are painful and annoy you and expose yourself occasionally. I mean, that's like me being in car culture. I think that me being in car culture, people write me and they're like, you changed my opinion on trans people, because they just they have preconceived notions and they don't understand the dynamics. And it's like, you just have to accept the fact that there are things in life that, are going to get under your skin. And then, I don't know, you got to like learn to enjoy them a little bit.
Well, thank you so much, Rose and Emily, for taking the time to hang out with me and talk through this stuff. I really appreciate like everything that you guys are doing. It's really cool.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
You can sign up for the next Engine Basics class by going to carcrush.com. That's CARKRUSH.com. The next classes are being held on July 27th and July 28th. You can also find their podcast, Car Crush is Hotboxing, on your favorite podcast listening platform. And now for some events happening this week. Every Thursday on the show, we like to bring you a few recommendations to help you plan your weekend. Here's what we got. The Portland Pride Waterfront Festival is starting this Saturday. There will be food, performances, vendors. Head on down to Tom McCall Waterfront Park for the festivities. And the Portland Pride Parade, which I just found out is the largest parade in Oregon, is on Sunday beginning at 11 a.m. It's starting from the North Park blocks and ending on Nadeau Parkway at the festival. There's also a series of free park concerts that are starting today in Northwest Portland. The first one at Wallace Park will feature live music from 6 Ways from Sunday. It goes from 5 to 8 p.m. For even more local events and news, sign up for our daily newsletter, Hey Portland. We'll throw all links in the show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.